So one of the most dramatic stories, one of the most dramatic crises of this new presidency came into public view for the first time this weekend, Saturday. There was an emergency court hearing that was called to ask a judge to turn around 3 airplanes that were taken off right then while the hearing was underway. The Trump administration said people on those planes were Venezuelan gang members. That's what they said, but there had been no process, no proceeding at all that determined if that was true. Trump said they were, that was it, and the Trump administration said they therefore would be treated as alien enemies of the United States. So with zero legal process at all, just on Trump's say-so, these hundreds of people, who knows who they are, many of them picked up off the street, were put on planes and sent to a prison in another country, where the nation of El Salvador promised to lock them up for at least a year doing hard labor. Well, the judge said, until we can figure out whether you are legally allowed to do this, I order you to turn those planes around, bring those people back. Hours later, as you now know, those planes landed in El Salvador despite the judge's order, and the people on those planes, whom the Trump administration still hasn't identified, they're now in a huge Salvadoran prison. And that country's president is saying he's going to keep them there as long as the Trump administration pays him for it. Since last weekend, the federal judge in this case has been trying to determine if the Trump administration deliberately flouted his orders, and if so, what the consequences should be. The judge gave them a list of very simple questions to answer, like what time did the planes take off? When did they land? How many people were on the planes? The Trump administration has basically been playing Mad Libs to avoid answering those questions. They've claimed that the judge's order didn't count because he spoke it from the bench and only later issued a written order. That's not how the law works. They have claimed that once the planes reached international waters, Donald Trump acquired super special powers over the planes that the judge could not overrule. What did you, homeschool law school? What are you talking about? Yesterday, before a court-ordered deadline, they suddenly said they might invoke something called the state secrets privilege, which is basically the government saying, you're not allowed to know, just trust us. The judge grudgingly gave them another day, another 24 hours to try again. Here's how the judge today reacted to what the Trump administration told him today. He said, quote, the government again evaded its obligations. The judge says all the Trump administration gave him was a statement from an immigration officer in Texas who says they need much more time to respond to the judge's demands. Because, quote, I understand that cabinet secretaries are currently actively considering whether to invoke the state secrets privilege over the other facts requested by the court's order. Despite those magic words, the judge was not impressed. He wrote, quote, this is woefully insufficient. The government cannot proffer a regional ICE official to attest to cabinet-level discussions about the state secrets privilege. The judge orders that by 10 a.m. Eastern tomorrow, the Trump administration, quote, shall submit a sworn declaration by a person with direct involvement in these cabinet-level discussions regarding invocation of the state secrets privilege. And you say you can't tell me anything because Trump's cabinet is discussing whether this is state secrets. Well, you can't just assert that randomly from Texas, Junior. You have to actually prove to me that those discussions are happening with a sworn declaration from, I guess, members of Trump's cabinet by tomorrow morning. And I know this feels a little bit like legal wrangling, but the stakes here are almost unimaginably high. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of discussion about, what happens if the White House starts ignoring court orders. Short answer, death of the Republic. But also, the stakes are so high here because the Trump administration is claiming it has the right to grab anyone it wants and ship them anywhere it wants with no court hearing, no deportation order, without even a warrant. Anybody, just on Trump's say-so, you're gone out of the country, disappeared indefinitely. And this is not me exaggerating for dramatic effect. This is exactly what the Trump administration is saying it has the power to do, even as it engages in this legal shell game with the information the court wants. Their primary argument is the court has no right to ask any questions at all. Donald Trump, on his own say-so, with no legal process at all, can simply exile people out of this country and put them in foreign prisons indefinitely. They say, quote, this case is not even justiciable. That's not a word that non-lawyers should know how to pronounce, and so I don't. But it means they're saying this isn't even subject to the power of the courts. Trump claims that he has unreviewable power. And the president gets to decide who counts as an alien enemy over whom he has unreviewable power. Here's the New York Times today. Quote, Trump administration lawyers have determined that an 18th century wartime law the president has invoked to deport suspected members of a Venezuelan gang allows federal agents to enter homes without a warrant. They're claiming the right, what they're claiming the right to do is if somebody in the executive branch, somebody in ICE, some random border patrol officer looks at you and says gang, then they don't need a warrant. They can go into your house, they can arrest you, forcibly detain you, and they can disappear you out of the country. This is from a declaration filed in court by a woman who fears her brother has been deported to that Salvadoran prison. She says her brother has never been part of a gang and that he has no criminal record. Quote, I last spoke to him on March 14th, 2025, and believe he was removed to El Salvador shortly after that because I have not heard from him since then, and I can no longer find him on the ICE detainee locator. If he were detained anywhere in the U.S., I know he would contact me because we spoke almost daily while he was previously detained. If he were back in Venezuela, I would hear from him as well. I'm extremely concerned about the health and safety of my little brother. From a declaration filed by an attorney for the young man, she says, fled Venezuela for his safety. Quote, on Friday, March 14th, 2025, one of the attorneys assigned to his case called the detention facility where he was thought to be to try to schedule a legal call. He was told by the facility that his client was no longer there. He asked where his client was and was told by the facility employee that he did not know. Here's immigration lawyer Lindsay Teslowski, quote, our client worked in the arts in Venezuela. He is LGBTQ. His tattoos are benign, but ICE submitted photos of his tattoos as evidence he is a gang member. His attorney planned to present evidence he is not, but he never got the chance because our client has been disappeared. Joining us now is Lindsay Teslowski. She's president of Immigrant Defenders Law Center. Ms. Teslowski, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So this is unusual, and correct me if I am wrong. I know that you have not previously identified your client when speaking to the press or when speaking publicly, but I understand that you want to share his first name and some photos with our viewers tonight. Is that correct?
That's correct. Names and identities of people have been shared today via list, and so we know that it is inevitable that our client will be identified, and we feel it's important to let the world know who Andrei, our client, is, because he is a human being. He is a young professional from Venezuela. He's a makeup artist. He is a gay man. He is someone who came to the United States seeking protection. He came seeking asylum. Upon entry into the United States, he was detained because of his tattoos, some of which you can see in those photos, but these are not the tattoos of somebody who is involved with gangs. These are normal tattoos that you would see on anybody at a coffee shop anywhere in the United States or Venezuela. And today, we have confirmation from the government, one of the few groups or attorneys that have confirmation that our client is indeed in El Salvador. Our client last week was supposed to appear in court where we would have started the process of refuting the baseless allegations against him, but we never got to have that chance. Our client has been forcibly removed and disappeared, and we don't know what his legal case, where it goes from here.
Do you know if he has any legal recourse at all? Do you have any means of contacting him, or do you have any means of trying to track one down if you don't have one now?
So the only reason we know that our client is in El Salvador is because he was supposed to be in court last Thursday. ICE never presented him. Over the ensuing days, we realized that he was likely part of this, group of planes that went to El Salvador. When we went to court on Monday, we were finally told by ICE that it was confirmed he was in El Salvador. In that moment, they said that he was removed to El Salvador. The immigration judge said, how's it possible that he's been removed if there's no removal order? And the ICE attorney that was in the courtroom said, I don't know. The case has been set over, so we do have a hearing coming up in a couple weeks, but ICE has now told us that they will not facilitate communication with our client because he has, in their words, been removed, and that they will not make him available for that hearing in 2 weeks. So at this point, we are, of course, watching the case closely that is ongoing related to the Alien Enemies Act, and we're pursuing all avenues because, you know, our client's life is at risk. We're concerned for his safety, and the fact that he was, you know, forcibly taken from the United States with no due process, you know, it's something that really shocks the conscience in a way that we haven't seen since family separation happened in 2018.
Yeah, the blunt and unsupported assertion that all of these people must have been terrible gang members, and then the photos of your client there, I think speak many thousands of words. Lindsay Teslowski, president of the Immigrant Defenders Law Center, representing this young man, thank you for your time. I know that this is a developing story. I hope it is a legally developing story, and I hope you'll keep us apprised. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Governor Tim Walz joins us live here next. Stay with us.